Hi again. I'm excited to get you over to Illustrator now. So this is the point where your collage is done and printed and your line drawing is done and been checked, and you are ready to take it over to Illustrator and turn it into a vector. So to get Illustrator in your doc, if you don't have it, you go up to the spotlight, type in IL, and you're looking for only the Illustrator CC 2018, not CS6, please. I already have it in my dock, so I'm going to fire it up. And when you first open it, you won't see all of this, but it will start to, as you use it, collect the recent things that you've been working on. So then it's really easy to just click on what you've been working on. But we'll start from scratch. So you want to hit this Create New, or if this happens to already be open, you can always go File New if these fancy little windows aren't open. So we can hit Create New. And very similar to the Photoshop document, it has recent ones in here for me, but if you don't see one for you, go to Print. It's always a good place to start. Change this over here to inches. I don't think in points or picas, and I don't know too many people who do. So inches are good because then we know what we're dealing with. And so we got 8.5 by 11 because it's letter size. That's good. So at this point, you need to think about whether your collage is vertical or more horizontal, your line drawing, sorry, what you've cropped down to. So mine's a little more vertical, so I'm going to click on that one and hit Create. So here you are in Illustrator. This is the Essentials workspace. It's a little bit of a different workspace, and it's not my favorite. So you can go into Window, Workspace, and find one that works for you. Oh boy, I thought I had mine set up there, but I got rid of it. So, goodness. So some of the things that you'll want to use, go into Window and open up your Navigator. That is a great tool. It's useful. I'm going to tuck it up over here. So I would say probably, here's a good one to start with. Go to Essentials Classic. This has a lot of the tools and things that we use, and then go from there. So then open your Navigator and pop it where you want it, right? This is up to you. I know I use my layers a lot. We don't need them now, but we'll need them later. So again, you can do it like this. This one has everything kind of tucked into here. If you like that, you can go with that, or it's really up to you. It's your workspace, so you need to find what works for you, but make sure that you're not always going in and having to open up your tools. If you're using something a lot, then you should make it available to yourself so that you're not having to grab it a lot. So see, I could move. I know I use my layers a lot. I use the links panel a lot. So you can come over here and start building your own workspace. Okay, and once you get it how you like it, again, you go to Window, Workspace, New Workspace, and I can name this my initials in 2018, name it your name, hit OK. And then if I'm working along, and I often move my Navigator around because it's useful for different things, then I can go to Window, Workspace, Reset, LS, and if everything was that easy to clean up, huh? So when you are ready to bring your line drawing over to Illustrator and turn it into a vector, there's a few things that you need to do. It's important to do it this way. Again, just like Photoshop, you always want to start with a new blank document so you are in control. And then what you do for Illustrator, it's a little bit different when you're bringing in something else from Photoshop or an outside image that's not an Illustrator image, you place it in here. And so what you do to do that is you choose File, Place, and then you'll navigate to your line drawing. And remember, I made the one with the background invisible, so it's right there. It's important to note this, whether you link it or not. So linking can be great because what linking does, when this link button is checked, it doesn't actually embed my Photoshop document, which is 9.4 megabytes, into the Illustrator document. It just keeps it linked. So it visibly shows up here, but it actually houses the data in the Photoshop document itself. that can be great as long as you don't move those files. But if you link them and then move them, the links break and it can't find them. So if you're working right out of your GDIM folder and you have it organized like I do into one single folder, then linking it is great. If you have some of your work in your downloads and some of it on the GDIM drive and some of it here and there, which you shouldn't because you'll lose it that way. But if you know that your work is kind of scattered, I would uncheck link so that you don't lose your work. This is really useful for client projects and things like that we'll do later. So I always am in the habit, I link it and always keep the files together. So I'm going to hit link and place. And then it gives you the ability to click on the page and set your image from your line drawing right up there. You don't want to scale it up at this point. We can scale it up right before we print, but actually when you're doing this, the smaller it is, the better. So I'm just going to zoom in because what we're about to do with Illustrator is some high resolution, high RAM demand stuff, and we want to make sure that we don't max out Illustrator's capabilities and crash it. So we're going to work small and then scale later. Okay, so I placed the line drawing in here, and you'll notice with Illustrator you've got your tools here, and then your control panel, unlike Photoshop, it'll change based on what you have selected. So in Photoshop, your control panel changes based on what tool you have selected. But in Illustrator, it's changed on what object you have selected. So that's what this is Illustrator looks at this as an object. And right now, it can't see anything but a box because it's not a vector. So it's a bitmap, and Illustrator doesn't speak its language. Later, we have a great video explaining difference between bitmap and vectors. Please make sure that I play that for the class. So with my line drawing selected, you'll see options up here, and one of them is image trace. So you go ahead and click that, and it's going to automatically run through. Don't worry if it looks horrible or you don't like it or it makes it all black or all white or all wrong. It's just doing the default, and then you have to open up the panel and control it. And so where that is right up here, image trace panel, and you click on that. And if you can't find that, you can always go to Window and pop up image trace as well. And so with preview selected, as I make changes, it will show them here. So I typically start with the default at top. Oh, and yours might come in close like this, and that's okay. You can expand and get to the advanced options. But just to start with, I like to start with a preset. Usually black and white logo is a good one. I tend to avoid all the ones below black and white logo because all of these sketched ones either are just really weird looking. That one actually looks okay. But when you go to live paint them, it'll leave holes in them sometimes. So I say try these ones down here at your own risk. The ones black and white logo and above are pretty consistent and work pretty well. So I'm going to go with black and white logo, and then I'm going to adjust it myself. So the threshold is your balance of white pixels to black pixels. So you turn it up, there's more black. Turn it down, there's more white. So as I'm looking at my drawing, it looks like a few spaces are kind of being filled in that shouldn't. So I'm going to turn my threshold down. You do want to keep this on black and white. For future projects, you can actually image trace in color and in grayscale, but that creates a lot more areas to color, and again, just really complicates this project. So if you want to use image trace and go nuts later for a future project, go for it. But for this one, keep this in black and white so that you have a simpler time. You can go into advanced. So the number of paths is like how many lines, how many details. So if I turn it up, it's more true to the original drawing. If I turn it down, it will kind of start to stylize it for me. So remember I was saying I'm not so smooth when I draw in Photoshop. So this is a way that I can compensate for some of that. The corners, if you turn them up, it's more corners. Turn them down, it's more curves and softer angles. The noise is something I usually don't control. It kind of puts a weird, well, this time it doesn't. Well, in the previous version, it put kind of weird pixelated noise, but right now it just seems to be adding some more details. So that's another one that you can mess with. And I want to show you this here. Ignore white can be pretty cool, but it can also be a potential downfall. So I wanted to show you what the difference is when you ignore white. So here's mine. I've already converted it and to live image trace and live paint, and have started to paint it. This is two different copies of the same one, and I'll show you how to get there in a minute, but I wanted you to think about, before you have the chance to click on that ignore white button, what it will do. It can be great because what it does do is everywhere where it normally would be filled in, it's transparent. So this one I clicked ignore white on. If you come over here and move this one on the background, this one I did not click ignore white on. So all of this colored background was originally white, and I had to go color it in. But it allowed me to color it in. So, excuse me, by clicking ignore white, I made it so that I cannot color in the background. But notice here, I can color in the background. So that's the difference when you're dealing with those two. So I would advise to give us the most ability to color, not ignore white. But again, for future reference, that is a nice little tool that sometimes in the future you might need it. So you can get rid of the white, but you limit your ability to color some of it. So once I like how it's image trace, I've had it previewed so it's tracing all along. I can just close it because it's done. Now, important steps. Doesn't matter which. This is your direct select. This is your selection tool. This one's your direct select tool. The selection tool is the one you use most often. We'll get into other ones later. So once I have that traced object selected, then I hit expand. And now Illustrator can see all the lines and things inside, and this is when it starts to get real fun. So then you go to Object, Live Paint, Make, and it's going to turn it into a live paint group. And the last thing you want to do before you start painting is close the gaps. So you go back to Object, Live Paint, Gap Options, and this will, and notice these only work if I have it selected with my selection tool. If it's not selected, those options will be grayed out and you won't be able to do it. So now the gap options are where it will close the spaces for me so the paint doesn't leak. So I can change different colors to have it show me the gaps in different colors and different sizes. So small looks pretty good. Let's look at medium. See, that's too big. That's starting to close places that I don't want to close. So I'm going to close the small gaps and hit OK. And now it's going to keep the paint from leaking from me. So now you want to click outside of this to deselect it so those blue lines aren't in your way. And to do that, you either click anywhere outside of the object, or you go to Select and choose Deselect. Okay, now this is where it starts to get real fun. The ability to live paint it. So the live paint bucket is over here in your tools. You'll probably see this shape builder tool first. You just right click and choose the live paint bucket. And as you move over your live paint group, it will highlight in red everywhere you could paint if you click there. So to load colors, you can either click, this is your fill color, this is your stroke color. We're not really doing anything with strokes at this point, so you just want to make sure fill is forward, and double click and you have the whole rainbow to choose from here. You can go to your colors or your color guides. There's so many different ways to choose colors in Illustrator. So to start with, I'm just going to pick a color I like, and with the live paint bucket, everywhere I click, it will paint it that color that I have in my fill color. Now be careful, you don't just want to, I mean, it is kind of fun to just kind of come in and fill everything up, but you want to think about, this isn't just a kids coloring page, even though you've basically just made a very sophisticated kids coloring page. This is an art piece, so what are you going to do artistically to color it in an interesting way? So instead of maybe just making the whole flower purple, I might go in and get a shade of purple that's just a little bit darker, and do a little contrast and maybe do some purple vines around it. don't know why it's selected on there. Just trying to get rid of those blue lines, but I guess as I mouse over it. Okay, so, and you can get some different greens for the leaves. Another way that you might want to color this is with gradients or patterns. Illustrator has all kinds of cool things that you can color with. And so you can go into swatches, and the swatches is kind of where you have some standard colors. You can get into all your colors from here. There's a few patterns and things. But to be able to see all of them, the easiest way is to go to Window, and at the very bottom, this is where I always get to all these things because they're just buried within their own menus, and I find them hard to find that way. So if I'm looking for, certain brushes, I'll just go here. Swatches, I'll just go here instead of trying to dig them out of the swatches. So for the swatches, you can base off of, there's like different color swatches. Oh, all the way over there where we can't see them. And once you open one of them, then you can scroll through and get through a lot of them that way. So there's just different color themes that you might think about. One of the swatches is a set of patterns, and so you can go in and just click on one of the beginning ones of those and then be able to get all of them. And so this is a really fun way to be able to add some pattern to your images. Maybe I want like a cool pattern flower instead of just a plain one. Be careful with these. It's easy to overdo them. If you do something like the entire background with something kind of big and loud, it can really take over your image. One cool thing about image traces and the live paint is I don't have to undo this though. I can try another one and just keep going. I don't really ever have to undo. The paint doesn't build up on itself. It just keeps replacing itself. That's the live thing. Even if we were to change the shape of this, it would go with us. So you can really experiment and try a lot of different effects and things with these in Illustrator. And like I said, experiment, look, try different things. There's a funny fish. Try it. Ooh, and then Command Z it, because it only works in a few things. I've seen that fish use really well though. Okay, and there's animal patterns and all kinds of cool things. So experiment, play, have fun. By the time you get to this point in your project, you should really just enjoy coloring this awesome color page that you made. And once it's all done and colored, you can see me to print. But make sure to check out our last video where I show you some tricks about using gradients and manipulating your gradients. Thanks, bye.